So, for those that don't know, Colgate is an FCS opponent. What does that mean in case you are a novice to college football? And that's okay if you're a novice to college football. That's why I'm here to explain it to you. And I'm going to put it in very, very simple terms. Syracuse football plays in the FBS division. That is the highest level division of college football. Colgate plays in the next tier, which is the FCS. As a result, there is typically a very, very big talent gap between the players that play in the FBS, the highest level of college football, and the FCS, which is the tier below the FBS. Syracuse football is a perfect 20-0 against FCS opponents in their program history. Last year, Syracuse football got to play one FCS opponent on their schedule. It was Holy Cross. And for context, Syracuse football in this game, they did not play well at all. You can go back and actually watch the post-game reaction show we did for that game back in 2024. It was early in the season. And yet Syracuse football won that game 42-14. The last time Syracuse football played Colgate, you have to go back to the season opener of 2023, where Syracuse football won that game. You ready for it? 65-0. So what does this all mean? Well, if you're a fan of Syracuse football, which most, if not all of you watching or listening to this podcast are Syracuse fans, and you want to go to a game and you want to be sure that you're going to see your team win, right? Because whenever we go to a game and you have a rooting interest, you want to see your rooting interest win, but you know that it's not a guarantee that you're going to see your team win. Well, this game on Friday night versus Colgate is about as close as you can get to a guaranteed win for Syracuse football. And we're actually going to have a podcast Poll Friday on Thursday this week because Syracuse is playing on Friday. We're not going to do Poll Friday on Friday. But what I meant to say was on Thursday, the question for this week is what is an acceptable outcome for Syracuse football in this game versus Colgate? Spoiler alert, I think we should all be expecting a blowout in this one. Syracuse should have no problems dominating Colgate on Friday. So what are the 5 things that we want to see from Syracuse football now that we've gotten through the brief history of Syracuse versus FCS opponents, Holy Cross, and also Colgate as well tied into it? Number 1 of things we want to see here on Locked On Syracuse, Darrell Gill to emerge. We haven't really talked about Darrell Gill all that much on this show ever since the season started, but if you go back through all the offseason podcasts that we did on this channel, there was a lot of Darrell Gill talk, and for good reason. Darrell Gill was entering his 3rd year of college football. Now he's in his 3rd year of college football. He took a big step forward in development a season ago. But 2025 so far has been a little bit of a mixed bag for Darrell Gill. I'm not going to sit here and say he's played poorly, but I don't think he's necessarily lived up to expectations so far. The season opener versus Tennessee, he was invisible for most of that game. He only had 2 catches for 33 yards. But last week against UConn, Darrell Gill was a lot better, 4 catches for 84 yards. Darrell Gill, one thing about him is he's very good at stretching the field. A season ago, he led the ACC with over 18 yards a catch. This year so far, I know it's early, only been 2 games. He's only got 6 passes so far. He's only caught 6 passes so far. He's sitting at nearly 20 yards per catch. So he's still showcasing his ability to stretch the field. But through 2 games, and again, we were kind of expecting Darrell Gill to be the number 1 wide receiver of Syracuse football, or at least the number 2 wide receiver of Syracuse football. But so far, through 2 games, he's been targeted 12 times. That is 4th on the team behind Justice Ross Simmons, who I believe has been targeted the most. We talked about it yesterday with Dan Villari. Dan Villari is 2nd, and Jonte Cook is 3rd. With a guy like Darrell Gill, we know that he can definitely stretch the field, but I want to see more design plays for him, particularly in the short and intermediate passing game, because this is the type of game where you can see what you have in your players. You don't want to play sloppy. You don't want to open the door for Colgate to try to win the game, actually. You need to handle your business first. But after you've sort of handled your business, this is the kind of game where you could kind of take chances in this one. See what you got in your players. So more design plays for Darrell Gill. Let's see him in the screen game. Let's see him in the short passing game. Let's see him running quick slants. Let's see how it goes. I want to see Darrell Gill emerge on Friday night versus Colgate. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're with me, Darrell Gill to emerge on Friday night. Another thing I want to see, a commitment to running the football. That's right. It has now been back-to-back years of me saying that on this podcast. I remember a year ago thinking after a few weeks, man, I want Syracuse football to run the ball more. They're airing it out too much with Kyle McCord. But eventually, I think we all just accepted that that's what Syracuse was going to be in 2024. And they're taking the same approach in 2025. So naturally, I am once again saying, hey, don't forget about the running game. Syracuse football this year is sixth in the nation in pass attempts per game at 47. Last year with Jeff Nixon as their offensive coordinator as well, they were third in the nation at 42 and a half attempts per game. But this is Colgate, okay? This is Colgate. Running the football should not be a problem for Syracuse football. Last week, Yassine Willis had only 11 carries versus UConn. That's just not acceptable. And he had 23 in week 1 versus Tennessee. And after the game, head coach Fran Brown says, hey, we need to get Yassine Willis the ball even more. Turns out they gave the ball to him even less. So more Yassine Willis in this one. But it's not just about Yassine Willis because we don't want him to be running on the ground against a team like Colgate. I'm not sitting here saying, hey, Yassine Willis 30 times up the gut. That's just going to be ridiculous here. But also some of the young guys. And also Will Nixon. Now, Will Nixon did get a decent amount of carries versus UConn, 9 to be exact. But hey, how about more Malachi James? How about more Jaden Hart? Colgate should not be able to stop the running game of Syracuse football in this one. Again, FCS opponent, and here is what they've done this season against FCS opponents, particularly stopping rushing attacks, okay? They gave up 187 yards on the ground to Monmouth. They also gave up 119 rushing yards to Villanova. And no, we're not talking about Villanova basketball, which actually hasn't been very good recently, but that's neither here nor there. Villanova is also an FCS football team. So 187 to Monmouth, 119 to Villanova. If you're Syracuse football, you should be looking at that saying, hey, if those teams can put up those rushing numbers against Colgate, if you're Syracuse, why can't you put up 200, 250 rushing yards in this one? Well, how about a commitment to the running game on Friday night?